Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. From 2012 to 2014, the horror franchise we celebrated in October was John Carpenter's The Thing, considered either a remake of The Thing from Another World, or just another adaptation of the short story Who Goes There? The comics were bad, but a lot better than the Silent Hill ones. For those of you unfamiliar with the movie, it's about a group of researchers in Antarctica who are being attacked by an alien shapeshifter that can absorb people into it. Even one stray cell is enough to slowly be consumed by it, and since it can imitate a person perfectly, no one is sure who is or isn't infected with it. The primary failing of the Thing comics was the shift from a movie about paranoia and slow-building horror into more of an action piece. Unlike the Silent Hill comics, where it felt like the creative team barely knew anything about it, the Thing comics feel more like they only watched the movie once or twice. They remember details, but some things about it don't hold up the more you think about it. The first two miniseries were not good, but had some interesting ideas, while the final one, Eternal Vows, just is bad and bizarre. The alien's behavior isn't consistent with the movie, and instead ends up being something more generic and goofy, especially as it seems to fall in love with a woman infected with it.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Oh, and I also covered an adaptation of Who Goes There that introduced us to the original form of the Thing, a green, googly-eyed Muppet thing. My title card artist turned him into a chibi monster named Thing Tucker. The Thing is a franchise that really should not be a franchise. A sequel or two, maybe, if it was handled well, but continuing the story like this, it just had diminishing returns. However, there was room for a prequel, which happened in 2011. The prequel is not that great. The filmmakers tried, and there was plenty of studio interference. Seriously, putting CGI over the practical effects? What the hell is wrong with you? But it just was not as good. Still, with major releases like that, there tends to be tie-in material. And thus comes this comic, The Thing, The Northman Nightmare. Interestingly, this is the only comic in the franchise that actually only has The Thing in its name, as opposed to The Thing from Another World, done so because of fear of brand confusion with the Fantastic Four character. The comic was released in 3 parts digitally for free by Dark Horse, and it's another prequel! Sort of. It's billed as a prequel to the 2011 film, but that is stupid, and I'll get into why that is in a minute. Unless, of course, you watched my review of The Thing from Another World, Questionable Research, where I already talked a little about this, in which case, you know the reason why that is stupid. Or you've read the comic yourself already, but who the hell reads comic books, am I right? So, like with Silent Hill Hunger, will this comic finally explain aspects of the story that were previously unknown to us? Will this comic retroactively affect how one reads the other Thing miniseries that I had covered before? Nope. Let's dig into The Thing, The Northman Nightmare.
Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazons and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
The cover's okay, featuring a Viking half transformed into the Thing. I especially love that he's still holding his axe, because it's not the giant mouth extending down his torso that we should be afraid of, guys. It's that big battle axe there. I admit I probably shouldn't even care about the cover, since, well, distributed digitally for free, and it's not like the cover is what'll get people interested in it. But as a cover, it's decent. We open in Greenland, 1121 AD. And And instantly the entire idea of this being a prequel falls apart. The thing landed on the friggin' opposite end of the planet, Antarctica! And it was made very clear that if it ever left Antarctica, the world was doomed. So yeah, the world is doomed. I don't even get why they bothered to advertise it as a prequel when you could have just said it was an alternate universe story. Again, it was given out for free. It's not like they had a lot of money riding on people getting a copy. Greenland. Of all the lands they conquered, the icy mass to the north proved to be one of the Vikings' greatest challenges. They never learned to turn into the skid. Unlike many of the lands they explored and settled, it was not the indigenous people who were the greatest threat. It was actually the IRS. The enemy was the land itself. Quickly, men! Attack the dirt with your swords! The Viking ship is trapped in the ice, and their leader, Rodmar, says that they can walk the rest of the way. One of his crew wonders if walking on the ice is a good idea. If we wait, Horde, the ice will crush our vessel. On foot is best. And immediately one of their party falls into a hole in the ice. Okay, to be fair, Horde, Gary's been trying to undermine my command decisions this whole trip. I'm pretty sure he's faking that. Horde tries to grab hold of him and bring him out of the icy water, but something with tentacles seizes the guy and drags him down more. Rodmar pulls Horde back up, his hand now critically freezing. It seems the gods answered me. I don't think Gary appreciates that the gods have terrible aim. Worried about the cold temperature spreading, they tie off his hand and lop it off at the wrist. You know, in retrospect, we probably shouldn't have had Bruce Campbell plan our healthcare system. Souvenir, old friend?
Are you going to eat that?
I will wear it as an amulet for the gods and our enemies to see. Behold, enemies, I wear my own hand as a necklace. Why? Did you lose it in battle? No, my hand was really cold, so we cut it off. Is that wound cauterized or treated at all for infection? Be afraid of me! That hand has been decomposing for days and it's hanging right under your face. How do you stand the smell? As they walk off, apparently just shrugging off losing a guy and a hand, a tentacle creature comes up from the ice to watch them. On the way, they provide exposition. They're heading to a village led by a man named Bjorn. They've lost contact with the village and have come to investigate. Bjorn Grimshaw is a great man. There must be a good reason they have not sent a ship for so long. Oh, they would have, but all the skilled captains keep getting their hands chopped off instead of buying some mittens. As they begin their trek, they notice a hillside has evidence of a massive battle that took place recently, or at least that the ground is scorched and full of dead plants. Stay alert. There's more here than meets the eye. Okay, a new one to add to the list, Transformers versus The Thing. Examining the corpses in the battlefield, they see signs of people merged with animals, like a skull of a merged ox and human. This skull is neither man nor animal. Manimal. Upon seeing how many of the corpses were burned, Horde suggests that the fire could have fused an animal and human together. We've been on many fiery battlefields, and I have never once seen one bone melded to another as a result. Although there was that one time we saw bone melded with vegetable. That was pretty weird. They move on, eventually arriving at the village and find the city gates open. There's no one around and no evidence that a battering ram had forced the gates open. Whatever happened here happened within these walls. Aerial bombing. Within the city are ruins and piles of dead bodies, most of them twisted and fused with animals like the bones they found. However, the first part ends with the arrival of a few women covered in sheets. Well, I say part, but this is all in one download, so that little to be continued right there is really kind of unnecessary. The men ask what happened, with the lead woman saying that their own forces turned and attacked them. Where is Bjorn, the village leader? He was the first to attack. I mean, you kind of expect politicians to turn on their own citizens, but not quite so directly. Horde accuses the woman, Astrid, of lying, but Rodmar wants to hear more. Bjorn was off in the Grand Hall with Tofa when we heard screams. When we ran to see, Bjorn was there covered with blood, but the woman was gone. He turned on us. In retrospect, they were rehearsing a live stage version of Carrie. She said a massacre followed and that she hid, but then a man comes running out of a building screaming, saying that she and her friends committed the massacre. They restrain the man, named Finn, as Rodmar questions him. Are you trying to tell me that Bjorn Grimshaw and his entire army were murdered by 5 unarmed women? Is that what you're telling me, Finn? I mean, women being afforded similar social standing as men in Viking society? Is that what you expect me to believe? And honestly, if they're not holding weapons now, clearly they weren't holding weapons before. I joke, but Rodmar actually doesn't trust either side, ordering both him and the women put into a hut together for the time being. Finn refuses to spend any time alone with them and runs off, forcing Horde to put an axe in his back. Rodmar also asks Horde to let him seal his wound properly with heat and iron. No need. Already it heals. Man, I miss the days when you could chop off your hand with an unsterilized axe in the middle of a snowy wasteland in Greenland and then be just right and ready to go into combat the next day. We're just too lazy these days. Rodmar takes the first watch, wanting the men to get some sleep after the long journey, but they rotate watching the hut in shifts. During another shift, one guard falls asleep near a campfire, the other getting lured away by a woman into the hut. The next morning, they wake up the sleeping guard and wonder where his partner went off to, not spotting him in the hut. Rodmar orders a search, as well as for some of the men to start burning the bodies in the village. The women are brought out to be questioned, but when he sees them, Rodmar is confused since there are now 6 women in the group. Before they can question that, the body of Finn is put on the fire. And it transforms into the Thing, decapitating one guy to end part 2. He's not alone in that, as the final part begins with another decapitation, 2 guys getting impaled, and yet another guy getting sliced in half. Rodmar rallies the remaining forces, realizing that they shouldn't try to fight it, just keep it contained in the fire. The women manage to escape, but Horde tosses his axe at Astrid to try to stop her. He misses, but cuts off part of her hair in the process. On a hunch, Rodmar lights the hair on fire, and naturally, it's the Thing. The hair lives! By Odin's beard, Rodmar! We're in a chapter of Uzumaki! Horde points out that it's as if every part of the Thing is alive. Then every part of it shall die. Bring me the finest hairdressers in all the land. They set the village on fire and hunt after the Thing, spotting Astrid near that battlefield we saw before, half transformed into the Thing. For some reason. She ducks into a hole near the side of the hill. For whatever reason, they decide to chase a herd of musk oxen into the hole, their stampede unearthing what was hidden inside it. A crashed alien saucer. Or maybe it was taking off out of the hole? It's unclear, because for whatever reason, the weight of the oxen causes the ship to crash and explode. Apparently, along with the Thing, the aliens were transporting a full cargo bay of nitroglycerin and oily rags. The Thing, still alive and made up of merged people, attacks the Vikings, who fight it off as best as they can, keeping it in the blaze. It kills a few, whaps Horde across the face, but they're able to keep it inside the fire until it burns to death. And so our comic ends with Rodmar and Horde enjoying a fire together while the remaining men sleep, considering how they'll have to survive for at least half a year before another ship comes looking for them. However, Rodmar notices that Horde is rubbing his hands together. As in plural. I wonder what they will find when they get here. But hey, at least nobody will be infected with the Thing! High five! This comic is decent. Okay, but not great. While it's certainly not a prequel, I wouldn't call it bad. For what it is, it's an enjoyable little done-in-one. Honestly, its biggest problem is that it's so short. The focus is wisely kept to just Rodmar and Horde as named characters, but there's not really much in the way of characterization or an arc. Rodmar is depicted as a wise leader, able to notice problems and devise decent solutions based on the information he has, although that's undermined a bit when his first order we see ends with someone getting dropped into the water, while Horde is shown as tough and fiercely loyal. However, since it's only 24 pages long, there isn't a lot of room to explore the paranoia that comes from the situation. And it's a good setup. Are the women the Thing? Or is it just as they said, with their leader infected first and leading to a slaughter? There's room to develop this stuff. The twist with Horde at the end is good, but kind of unnecessary, since we already showed earlier that the Thing was living in the ice-cold water, and that it could already spread. You could have ended with the two saying, "Thank God it's over and the world is safe," and then show the Thing in the water floating off, since by now the reader has forgotten about the monster earlier established. Especially since that same version of the monster doesn't come back later in the story. Still, the twist with the hand was nicely set up, and we can assume he was either infected while trying to save the guy in the water, and not realizing he was infected until later, what with the "it's healing already" foreshadowing, or when the Thing hit him during the final fight. Overall, it's not a bad story at all. just not as good as it could have been. Next time, we end our look at Halloween's past with a follow-up to a review from last year, and another slugfest between horror stars. You said he was the most perfect clone you had ever seen. Was that just some boasting on your part? Well, that's the other thing that doesn't make any sense about all this. I wasn't lying before. There are telltale genetic signs that something is a clone. And the clone I created had those. The one that I examined did not. Those can't just be removed. So the guy who showed up at the house might not even be the clone you created. I don't think so, but on the other hand, it's not like you've got a bunch of copies of yourself running around, so who else could it be? All I know is I'm starting to sympathize with him when it comes to lost memories. Look at this stuff. Relics and trophies that I should feel a connection to, but it's just junk to me. Aaron says it doesn't matter who I am, just as long as I try to live my own life. My own life. A life without a real name, without a real history, wearing someone else's face. I don't even like this face. If Whatley was lying and I am a clone, then I'm just a copy, a duplicate. No better than some machine that was mass-produced with 1,000 more like... I remember losing my hand? No! It's just a memory. A memory that's not mine. It can't be. I can't trust who I am. I can't trust anything that I remember. If I wanted to, I could just walk around here pretending to be Linkara, because all I am is a copy of him made in his image. I remember. I remember! I remember. I remember!